Wow. It's a perfect place.
Yep.
Oh, I'm so glad it's here.
Well, and with the
It was
Mark
our house for
with
quite a long
with the
time.
Mark Twain connection, you know,
Yeah.
that's why the Native Sons
Yeah.
decided
Oh,
that we
it's
should
just-
have it on display here. So it's on loan.
Well, we've.
I reproduced the same color. Originally it was 18 layers of paint on this thing, and I chipped it off with a hammer. It was all
18
lead-based paint.
18 layers.
18 layers. And the bottom, the only paint was left was right where the grease protected the paint, around the hubs.
Uh-huh.
And going through 18 layers of paint, and then the bottom was yellow, and we got connected with the Smithsonian,
Yeah.
and they had the original order from Abbott and Downing, and they said,
What for this one? Oh,
Yeah,
It's very cool.
In fact, there's a number.
Researched it back to the
There's a
number and
number.
everything. Yeah. And found that color. Boy, he was so happy.
it's called Perfect, and on the order it was called Perfect Yellow, and that was the name of the
okay.
paint in those days.
Okay, all right.
And I matched the yellow. It was made for the Poland Spring House in Poland Springs, Maine. And they used it as a hotel coach for however long they had it. I don't know how long. And then a guy bought it and brought his family west in it and sold it to the Wells Fargo and Placerville. And they used it to go between Placerville and Georgetown and all that area. And it was in use for a long time. And it was, I can't recall the number. It's under that
It's
jet seat.
512.
512, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's how we found out from the Smithsonian all the information, because they bought up all the stuff from Abbott and Downing when they went out of business.
Oh,
So they had the original order form for this. And so they had all that information. It made
Yeah.
it interesting.
Okay. Well, my understanding too is that yellow was identified it as a custom built.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
it was
because
not-
normally they come out that deep burgundy color with gold. This is all would have been gold, and then painted over the gold. And it was these could carry about 12 people. Get 9 inside, and however many they could get up on the top of this thing.
Well, actually, I was reading something that said up to 21.
Yeah,
21 people.
yeah.
Yeah,
I've seen
could.
them. There was-
Well, you think about it. If you have 9 inside, then you have another 6 up front and 3 on the back.
you
So
could
you're
get-
up to 18
you get
then.
3 there and 3 sitting back here.
And then you
And plus their luggage.
yeah.
And you'd have to have 6 horses pulling this thing. 'Cause that thing weighs 1.5 tons empty.
Yeah, that was my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
By the time you
so
get
with
that many people,
with 6 horses and using the rule of thumb of
Yeah.
1 ton per animal, like that. That's you're gonna have a little extra horsepower,
Yeah.
but not much if you're
yeah.
fully loaded.
Sometimes they used 8 if it was really steep.
Uh-huh.
But you figure how many thousands of miles these guys traveled, and this particular coach had been who knows how many thousands of miles. It was in considerably good shape when I got it to work on.
Oh, okay.
Except the paint was pretty bad, but
Okay.
it was the wrong color, of course. But it's amazing the different colors this thing had been painted over the years.
Hello, Ron. Jim Miller here.
Oh, hi, Jim. Glad to meet you.
We've crossed paths a couple times years ago. The
Yes.
last time was out here at the fairgrounds. It was I think it was a Trails Association or something.
yeah,
and I
yeah,
remember you came up
yeah.
to the table and we had one of our docents there whose name was John Scofield. So you guys had fun. Seemed you
Yeah.
were related, but you weren't.
No.
But either way, so a long time no see. So how you feeling? Doing good?
Good.
Looking
For an old
good.
geezer.
You looking great?
Yeah, I just turned 87 in January. So.
Somebody told me you were over 100.
Well, I feel like it sometimes. I look like it sometimes too.
No.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I've been here a long time since I've been in here. This originally was in Placerville. And I redid it for the Native Sons up
Yeah,
there.
Yeah, they still have it. It's theirs. They just have it on.
Oh, they still have it. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
no,
it's
it's
just
there.
it's on loan.
It's on loan.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
The museum up there didn't need it anymore, or something.
Well, I don't want to get into that.
The politics, I
there's
guess.
Totally
politics,
politics.
yeah.
I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
That's another story.
But could you imagine in the summertime when there's 8 horses, six horses out in front, all the dust that would come into this
Oh, I was
coach.
just telling these kids, see these little kids? I said, you want to ride on top? You want to ride inside? They said, I want to ride inside. I said, you'd be in the
Oh,
dust.
That's
Yeah.
why most of them got up on top.
I
of
know.
it,
That's why I said you got to get above the dust. You want to hold on top. So-
Yeah, this they wore dusters, of course, over their clothes, but
But still,
breathing that all the time.
Oh my God.
And it's hot, and you're sitting in there. Say, this little old lady in all of her
Yeah.
clothing,
well,
stuck between two guys. One guy's an old alcohol salesman,
Right.
and he's drinking too much at the time.
Yeah. Don't forget the guy chewing tobacco.
And chewing tobacco,
Oh yeah.
a lot of that.
Oh my God. They were.
I remember when I was a kid, back in the 30s, these old guys would sit along the curbs, along the benches in front of the old stores, and tobacco rolling off their chin.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They have stinging. I care if they had a
yeah,
beard.
just
Yeah.
running off.
Oh yeah.
Sitting there chewing and talking to them.
yeah,
But
nasty.
they'd be in here and they'd be,
People must have been tougher back then. They didn't seem to get
oh, you had to be tough. Can you imagine? And they'd go from, if you wanted to go from, oh, for instance, Missouri to California in a coach, you're in there for a long, long
Oh,
time.
absolutely.
Well, it's I think it was not Wells Fargo, it was Butterfield
Butterfield,
Overland Stage. Okay, so they were the ones that established the routes out here to
Yeah.
California, set up the whole system. Well, they guaranteed that they'd get a letter from St. Louis, Missouri, to either Sacramento or San Francisco in 25 days.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, but that meant that they, there's a time schedule.
And they're moving.
And they're the fastest leg was the first leg out of Missouri, 16 and a half miles an hour. After that, it dropped down to 4.5.
Well, you're talking a nice little straw. Hardly ever ran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
They could go like that.
my understanding is that would include from point A to point B, whatever that stretch
Sometimes
was.
12
It would
miles.
average. Over the course, it would average about 4.5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But that included the stop.
Well, we went across the United States in a covered wagon, and the average going through Arizona is a mile post along the highway. And we figured 3.5 miles an hour is good walking
yeah.
for miles. But the guy joined us that had been in the military, and he said the military would walk 2 miles and trot a mile. That way they could keep the horses up. They wouldn't get sleepy, because horses will sleep while you're walking. We have a picture of a guy out behind our wagon. This lady was driving a mule, and she was over like this, and the mule's eyes were shut. Walking along.
Probably dreaming the same dream.
Right.
Can we take a picture with the kids?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You bet.
Amazing.
Yeah, this was
Yeah.
built in the 1880s in Concord, New Hampshire.
Wow.
And it was sold to the Poland Spring House in Poland Springs, Maine, as a hotel coach.
Wow.
And then a guy bought it and brought his family west in it, and then sold it to Wells Fargo in Placerville.
Oh, no wonder they have the Wells Fargo.
Well, this is it. That's all
Oh,
that Wells
really?
Fargo had. It was,
Oh, okay.
they're called Concord
A
Stage
lot of the
coaches.
coaches they used out here in the mountains were called mud coaches. They were lighter.
Yeah, that's the one that's in
Oh.
behind
Around
there.
back.
Wow.
Yeah, around on the backside there.
And you could pull those with 4 horses pretty well.
Yeah.
Gee. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the picture of the kids.
Yes, you're welcome.
Enjoyed that.
Absolutely.
When we have people come in and they, first of all, they don't realize how big the museum actually
Yeah,
is.
I didn't
They-
need it. We pulled it up there. I
They
forgot.
think, it's just 30 minutes we'll be in and out of here,
Right.
and then 2 hours later. Well, so anyway, they come in and they'll say, well, we'd like to look at everything, but and I'll ask them. I said, do you want a tour or something like that? And I'll also ask them how much time they've got.
Yeah.
And so they say, well, we don't have a whole lot of time. So if you can tell us about something, but just one piece,
Yeah.
one piece that really stands out like that, and it's usually this. So I'll talk about that.
It's a good one to start with.
Oh yeah,
You
it
know?
is. There's because I'd spend 30 minutes talking about
Easy.
talking about different
Yeah.
things on here.
Yeah, it's when you figure people are confined in that small area for days, weeks sometimes, banging along on roads that were full of potholes.
Well, the
and-
thing was, you spent a fortune to do that too.
Yeah. Well, Mark Twain wrote some of his trips in the coach like that.
Yeah.
He wrote quite a good little narrative about how it was to travel that way. It wasn't easy.
No, it sure wasn't.
Yeah. But
But I'll tell them the story about Hank Monk and Mark Twain knew they knew each other, and
yeah,
and then about Mr. Greeley.
yeah.
I say
Well,
this
Hank
is
Monk, there was even songs written about Hank. He considered one of the best for a 6-horse driver. He's the one that. I'm trying to think of the guy's name he brought into Placerville that is a writer. Horace Greeley.
Horace Greeley, yeah.
And Horace was worried about getting there on time, and he said, "Keep your seat, Horace. We'll get you there on time." And he was kind of a salty old guy, but to sit up on a coach driving 6, I've driven 6, and it's
Well, you got all those reins in there, to
you
try
got
to
3 in each hand, and you're sitting out in weather that's horrible most of the time. Either
yeah.
too hot or
Yeah.
dust is flying. The reason they had a narrow, they put a little thing there a guy could sit because you didn't have any. Your hands are busy, and they're
so you don't have time to grab.
So you're kind of locked in a little. They put a little metal thing right here, so you're pretty well locked in. And when you're driving 6, it's concentration, boy. Because you got the wheelers and the swings and the leaders, and sometimes the swings will be a swing out just a little bit, and you just reach over and pull that line just a little bit. It doesn't take much.
to get it back in
into
line. Yeah.
If they're pulling straight, they're all pulling together. If they're swinging out just a little bit, one span isn't pulling. And it's quite a thing to have this many people in your control and in charge of. And they say that the guys could tell where they were in the pitch black at night by the sound of on the roads. They'd done that road so many times between Placerville and Carson City that they could tell even where they were when it was pitch black at night. You couldn't even see the horses. It was a handful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if I'd known they had some spot there, I'd come down, brought restriped that wheel.
Yeah, I don't know who did that. It came like that. So we
Really?
haven't done anything to it,
I wonder
so
what happened.
because it's not really ours, So,
Yeah, it's on loan. For how long?
5 years at a time.
I loaned a wagon to a museum. They wanted it for like 16 days. They had it for about 10 years before I finally went up and got it. But it was one of those things that I had so much stuff around the place I didn't need another wagon, so let them have it.
Well, it's kind of like this hearse right here, the hearse and the body wagon. They're actually on loan,
Have they?
but they've been the hearse has been here, I know, since 1951.
I was restoring a hearse, had it out in the barnyard. I was inside working on something inside, and this truck drove up. This guy gets out, and he walks around this hearse like it's gonna suck him into it.
Yeah.
He said, "How can you stand being inside this?" I said, "It's a wagon. It's had dead people in it, but that's just a wagon." But he acted like that thing was a rattlesnake was going to bite him.
Oh,
He
okay.
couldn't get close to it. He kind of like this one. That's funny. But the craftsmanship that went into these things, a lot of the early coach builders were from Germany. They got these German craftsmen that were so good. And a lot of that wood had to be bent.
Yeah.
All the pounding had to be. And they had the poplar, the wood they used for poplar, and they cut it about that thick. And they'd heat it and shove it down into this thing that would curve the wood that under
So
heat.
it'd have the arc that you
and
wanted.
leave it in there for a period of time, then take it back out, and it was there. So a lot of that, and all these, of course, all these things are cut on a bandsaw here. But if they're two halves, they're steamed, superheated steam, and put into a form. I built
Yeah.
thousands of wheels, I guess, by now. That's the hardest part when you build coach buildings.
Yeah.
Wheels.
We've had guests come through that have been playing with it.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to figure it out. This one kid from Alabama, he's looking at our wheels down there. We got one that you can take apart.
Yeah.
And everything like that. And he's looking at it, he says,
Yeah.
well, I built one wheel, but it wasn't that good, so I need to go back and do it again.
Well, shrinking a tire, as heavy and thick as these tires are, I put the wheel up on a table It's got a hole in it, so the hub sits down and it lays on the table. And you put the tire up on blocks, and I put a lot of firewood on top of that and heat it up to you watch the carbon. As the carbon forms, it's getting hot, and as the carbon burns off, it's starting to glow. It's starting to get a little bit red hot.
Okay.
And that's when it's expanded as much as it's going to expand. So you make this tire about, 3/8 of an inch smaller than the circumference of the wheel.
Okay. I've been told 1/4 inch, but it's...
Well, it depends on the size of the wheel.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
1/4 inch might be too much, and then it wouldn't be really tight. You got to get that thing down to where
It's good.
it drives a certain amount of dish into the wheel.
Yes.
Without the dish, there's no strength in the wheel, so you have to dish this way.
Yep.
And then whatever the dish is, you bend the end of the axle down so that it tilts. The wheels, like if you look at them back, they're tilted like this. So the spokes travel perpendicular to the ground as they roll under. So there's a slight, whatever the dish is, and the end of the axle bent down to that point. And there's a lot to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of math involved there.
Yeah.
I try to...
Well, if I'd been up in math, it wouldn't have worked for me because math was not my thing. But it's just trial and error more than anything. When I first started building wheels, I didn't have anybody to tell me how to do it. So
Yeah.
I made my mistakes. And as hard as wheel building is, you don't make that mistake again. You learn on that one real quick.
Well, that's what I tell people too. I said, well, it's all woodworking, right?
Yeah.
But so a carpenter could feasibly do it. But the difference between a carpenter and a wheelwright is that a wheelwright is always going to make a profit on a job.
Yeah.
That carpenter may not,
Yeah.
because he
Chances are.
invests too much time in trying to.
But in those days, a guy would apprentice for maybe sometimes 7 to 12 years,
Yeah.
working practically for free just to learn the trade. And they didn't have all the equipment like we have now to do these things with. It's amazing how many of these they built. They hundreds and hundreds of them, maybe thousands.
Then the other thing too is the thorough brace.
Yes.
Because people always notice that and say, well, wow, what's this all about? And I'll explain to them.
Yeah.
I did some research, and there was a coach builder in Berlin in 1660 that came up with the system like that. And for a long time they were called Berliners.
It's bull hide, and I buy the hides. When I made these, I bought the hides and cut it down the center, and then cut the strips, and then you shave them so that they come to a point, and then you run them together, and you rivet these together. You should make that continuous.
Okay, so it's more like so when you bring them together, it's like an overlap.
Yeah, you taper the leather so it doesn't make a bulge, and you rivet those together, and then you make a real long piece, and so that it comes together there, and it's quite a process, and just about I think about 12 hides just to make these thoroughbred, because you can't use a belly leather. You have to use, say the half the hide's about this. That's not going to use the first maybe that much of it, because this stuff is kind of mealy.
Okay.
There's no strength to it. But the bull hide, it's fairly thick at the back, right?
Well, yeah. You
can
look
see
at how thick it is.
Yeah. But it's just a long process.
But then, it's what I tell people too. I say, well, it was designed. That design is for the horses, to reduce the.
It wasn't designed for the comfort of the people.
Not for pastures, and they go, oh, really? Like that? I said, no, it's to dampen that jarring and jolting on that team of horses.
Yeah,
but
when you hit a bump, it tends to rock back like that.
Yeah.
And
if they got to fight it,
because all that pressure is right on their necks. I went across in the States to covered wagon, and by the time I got to Pennsylvania, we got into humidity. I started getting collar gulls, which is a gull that grows right at the point of draft on the collar. Gets about that big around, and it's just a big old canker.
Oh,
yeah, it's awful.
Painful. Yeah.
Well, it gets so hot that when you take the collars off, I had collar pads, but when I took the collars off, the hair would come off. You'd heat it so bad. Yeah. So I made foam rubber donuts, and it would spray sulfate and get off the wagon, ready to take the drive lines, and I'd get off the wagon and walk along beside the mules and pull it away and put some sulfate. Healed them on the trip. They did have that problem in the West because it was cold. When they
Okay.
got into that heat's what did it.
Okay. And
these guys,
lower humidity too.
yeah. And it would just scald the hair right off their collars.
I can imagine.
And that's why I use mules because they're really tough. They're a lot tougher than horses and smarter. There are those.
My dad used to say that. He says, "I don't know which is smarter, a chicken or a horse." He says they're both stupid.
You figure a brain's about that big for a 1,000-pound animal. You know? Smaller than our brains.
Yeah.
And sometimes, even with the mules, you drive past a white rock sitting along, and you drive past there 50 times, and the 51st time they'd shy at it, just off the road.
Okay.
And you had to be ready for that all the time. Well, I've had runaways with horses and mules, and I could stop a runaway with a mule by running him toward a fence or something like that, where horses don't even see it. They go right through it and
Yep.
go right through a barn wall even. They just crash right into it.
I watched him. I watched a colt one day decide that he was going to be on the other side of the fence,
Yeah.
and he just ran right into it.
Oh, yeah.
Tore himself all up.
Oh, sure.
So you stupid animal.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Well,
But a mule, generally, you can stop him to run him towards something like that.
I think mules are a little more intelligent,
Yeah.
and that's why they're so hard-headed and obstinate too. I think because they're thinking, "You want me to do what?
Yeah.
No, I don't want to do this."
No, I don't want to do that. But they're not stubborn. They're not stupid. You know, a lot of people have that idea that a mule is just stupid.
No.
Smarter than some of the people that drive them. I know that. Well, want to look at some other stuff, or is this mainly what you want to do?
no, we can talk. We can go ahead and.
You guys can talk shop all day.
Okay. Well, this is another one. You know, that people always look at it. You know, and say,
Yeah.
and like I say, this is actually on loan. It still belongs to the Carley family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so John Carley was the undertaker here in Angels Camp from 1880 until around 1920 when he got out of the business. Okay, so anyway, this particular hearse was built in Illinois by the Rock Falls Manufacturing Company, and so it was completed. Then it was put on a boat, sent around the Horn, came into San Francisco.
Wow.
And then Mr. Carley took possession of it, and so it's been here in Angels Camp ever since. So,
Imagine.
so it's low mileage.
Yeah.
You know, pretty low mileage. But the fascinating thing about it is, like, you know, okay, the plumes up here, because get asked all the time about those. So what's the plumes? And then of course the netting here.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like that. So it's what it means. Okay, the colors have different meanings. And so, like if you're just walking down the street and a funeral procession comes by and you know nothing about that person, just looking at the colors, they can tell you, okay, if the netting is black and the plumes are all black,
Yeah.
then that's an elderly person. Of course, at that time, we're talking about somebody that's probably, 50 or older.
Yeah.
You know, but then if the netting is all white and the plumes are all white,
Okay.
then it's a child.
A lot of times the hearses were white too for kids.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, but that was a simple one there, and then in this case here, the black with the black and white.
Yeah.
That's a middle-aged person, whatever that means.
Somewhere in the 40s and maybe.
30s maybe. I don't know.
I didn't know that part was
Yeah.
interesting thought.
So, but the way it would work, is that Mr. Carley would come pick you up in his body wagon, so he'd police you up in that and take you back to his home, where because that's where he ran the morgue out of, and get you all fixed up, get you in a casket, deliver you to whichever home was having the wake, and then after the wake was over with, then he'd pick you up in the hearse and take you out to the cemetery and get planted. And of course, we got 3 different cemeteries here. We got a Catholic cemetery, Protestant cemetery, and a Serbian or Eastern Orthodox.
Oh yes, yeah.
Like that. You can't mix and match. Like that is whatever.
Oh no. They won't go to the same place.
But anyway, that's how. That's how that worked. Oh, also, okay, like in 1904, a full-blown funeral cost about $150. And so it was interesting to go through his ledgers.
Yeah.
And you could see, okay, it's got the name of the person up on top like that. But then the one thing that I found was really interesting was see who picked up the bill for the funeral. And if it was a relative or something like that, that meant he could have gotten killed anywhere. But if the mining company had picked it up, then usually that was a mining accident.
Yeah.
He got killed on the job.
Huh.
Like that. So
Interesting.
yeah. So the $150, that, like I say, that'd be full blown now. It doesn't sound like much nowadays, but you factor you factor it out, and it's it's going to be equivalent to what a funeral is today.
I've got a Sears catalog at home, 1809 Sears catalog, and a top buggy, what everybody calls a doctor's buggy, sold for $24.95.
Yeah.
A brand new hub cost more than that. Just the hub now costs more than that. And this was with leather upholstery and a leather top.
Yeah.
$24. $24.95.
I've often thought this, gold went for about $20 an ounce, or $20.25 for most of the gold era.
Yeah.
And what was $20 worth back then? I mean, what was $20?
Well, yeah, I think I know that like for 1940, so you just go back to 1940 to factor it out for today's price, multiply it by $17.
Is that right?
Almost $18.
Wow.
The 30s or the 20s, it's more like about $27. So
I'm just wondering, gold back then, even now, isn't worth as much gold as now. Like, gold's about $1,300.
Oh, yeah.
It's even for inflation.
It's ridiculous now.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, my dad, in 1937, he was making $18 a week, and there was, at that point, 5 of us kids.
Uh-huh.
And we lived on that. That was, of course, during the Depression. Everybody was poor.
Yeah.
$18 a week, and of course we had a garden, we had a milk cow, and
So
you supplemented where you could. But I found a dime on the way home from school one day, and I told Mom, and she said, "Oh, good, I can buy a pound of hamburger." So
Yeah.
I gave her the dime, of course, and she bought a pound of hamburger with that, 10 cents.
so,
What the pound costs you now? I have no idea of it.
so it's going to run $5.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. Down here, we'll talk about these two right here.
Delivery wagon.
Okay, yeah, they're delivery wagons, and they were built by Henderson Manufacturing Company out of Stockton.
Oh yeah, they were good. They were
Okay,
good builders.
so Jim just told me this morning that they went into business around 1869. Okay, so once again we have two wagons here that basically haven't traveled far from their beginnings.
Well, Henderson's also built the big 20-mule borax wagons,
Yeah.
and they built the mud coaches that went all through this country, the mud coaches.
Okay.
So they were crafts, really good craftsmen. They did a lot of good
I
work.
was seeing, they built some really big stuff. I ran across a photograph of supposedly the biggest ore wagon that was ever built.
Yeah.
And they built it. And
those wheels.
And this guy,
are
this
tall,
guy
very big.
is standing there like that, and the wheel is way up above
yeah.
them. I don't know,
Yeah.
it's 8 foot or something like that
Yeah.
in diameter. That's a big wheel. But so this one right here, this had belonged to the Pendola Ranch, and so it's on loan here. In this, it's what's neat in this photograph right here. This photograph is this
Oh,
wagon,
for crying out loud.
and that's the Pendola Ranch. Of course, it's all
How
under
about that?
it's
Yeah.
all underwater now.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, New
That's what
Melones
it-
Reservoir, like that. So,
Good grief.
but anyway, that's that's
Yeah, these springs were called mustache springs, and same on that wagon. Look like the old mustaches,
yeah.
But they really
Well,
supported the wagon better than just front and back.
Well, like I'll tell people, you can have different types of delivery wagons, and we've got one that's more typical back there. But anytime you see, those side springs, it was intended to be used in mountainous or rough terrain.
Yeah.
Because it has to be able to take those side
Oh,
loads.
sure. Yeah.
If it's uneven.
But see, here's the same thing. You've got this, like a stagecoach, you've got this railing here where his hands are busy, and if it's on a side hill, you don't slide off the seat, and it just supports you a little bit.
Yeah.
better.
So you don't have to spend time, to
Yeah.
to-
Your hands are filled.
Yeah. So, but I'm not sure exactly when this was restored, but But anyway, yeah, it's in pretty good shape. And also this photograph right here on the text panel is this wagon right here. So that is Mrs. Adams actually driving it. It's up on Ebbets Pass. That's what Ebbets Pass used to look like.
Yeah.
So she was a long ways from home. But her and her husband had started a ranch up in Murphy's out on Pennsylvania Gulch.
Yeah.
And usually when you say ranch, well, everybody's thinking, oh, okay, beef cattle,
Yeah.
or something like that. Well, they had Guernseys and Jerseys,
Oh.
milk cows,
Milk
like that.
cows,
So
yeah.
so butter, cream, milk, all
Yeah.
that stuff, and that's what she did. Her husband passed away, and then
Where's Table Mountain?
Table Mountain.
Murphy's, but
Yeah, it's God, there's so many Table Mountains
yeah.
around. Like there's Table Mountain over on the Tuolumne side too, but it's just out there by Penn Gulch.
This is Adams Milk Wagon. Huh,
Yeah,
pretty nice.
but this is a really nice example. So, and if you were to take this top off like that, and you look at the two wagons like that, they're very similar.
Yeah.
This is obviously a little bit smaller,
Yeah.
but basically it's the same design.
Same type of,
Yeah.
Just have
The
flare,
brake-
just have floorboards on it, and other than that, but that's about the only difference. Just a lighter. You can pull
Yeah,
this.
you can see, the springs are just a little bit lighter like
Yeah.
that. It's just a little bit shorter and maybe not. Yeah, it's
you
about
can
the
see
same
you can pull
height.
with one horse on flat ground. But,
Yeah.
this would take generally two horses.
Yep.
That's the difference. That looks like a popcorn wagon
So-
there.
So, yeah, let's see. We got the popcorn wagons. We also have the mud stage.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so-
a mud coach.
So this particular one, I was doing some research on these mud stages, and now this one, supposedly, made the run from Angels Camp to Vallecito up to Murphy's and then back again. So not that far, but like I tell people, I said, well, mud stages are used on the rougher routes and probably a little less profitable, or in other words, they're not hauling as many passengers and
Yeah.
whatever, but still, this was more typical, I'd say, than the Concord.
Yeah. In the mountain country, these were
And
more practical.
and this right here is more than likely was owned by John Raggio. Okay, so John Raggio was he established a stage system throughout Calaveras and Amador counties, and so I know Ione and Jackson were two of his big areas, and he ended up he owned about 25 stages and 80 horses.
Wow.
Or
quite an investment.
yeah, it was. And then of course they have all the drivers as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what he did. Just running
Amazing.
passengers and whatever
Yeah.
else throughout the two counties.
Interesting.
So found the information. It was in a newspaper advertising, or basically talking about. I think 1884 or something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, it talks about him establishing these stage routes. So
Amazing. It just all these things.
and
have
then
traveled
and
a lot
then
of
once
miles.
again, I say,
Yeah.
I point out the thoroughbrace right there. Now the difference between this and the Concord is that on the Concord the body actually sits on the thoroughbrace.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
this they had to build kind of an extension.
So it
makes it
rocked,
look like
yeah.
it makes it
Well,
look
it
like a sled
Well, it had to rock. Give it a chance if
to back and
Yeah, it
forth.
had to.
And also, it had to lift the body up high enough
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you get the clearance.
Yeah, these guys knew what they were doing when they built these things. There's so many varieties of things that were needed for travel.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Well, it's one thing that Doug Hansen came in. I don't know if you know who
I
he
knew
is.
of him,
Okay,
yeah.
he was out here in California. This is about almost 5 years ago, and somebody that knew him convinced him to stop by the museum and just do a quick evaluation on our collection. So it was in the wintertime, so anyway, we come in, nobody's around like that, and he comes in, the first thing out of his mouth when he walked in was, "Wow."
Yeah.
And then he goes, "Oh my gosh, you'd have to go back east to find a collection larger than this."
Yeah.
And of course, that just means get on the other side of the Sierras.
Or we saw one up in Canada. It was a good
in
carriage.
Alberta.
Beautiful collection.
Yeah, that's you can't top that one. That's that's a special collection.
Plug the microphone in and narrate the thing for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, then he kind of walked around and looked at things, and he says, "Well, you have some prime pieces in here that other museums would kill to have."
Really?
Like that. And he says, and the other thing is that they're probably more complete than what I've seen in other museums. And then the other thing was that we have a nice variety of different stuff.
Yeah, you do. You really do.
Yeah.
From what I can see.
There's a lot of museums will have some carriages or some wagons or whatever like that, but they'll all be similar in some way, whereas ours is quite a range.
Yeah.
So, like this popcorn wagon.
Yeah. Yeah, I've restored a couple of those things. One of them had all the equipment in it. One of them.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I wish we still had was the insides of it, but.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is a Dunbar, and probably it's a 1912. So 1912, this sold for $2,000.
Wow,
so
that's a lot.
$2,000, you could buy a nice little house for that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the story goes, and it's kind of interesting. Dunbar started working for Charles Creeder's company in Chicago. Okay, Creeder's is known for building a lot of different little street or sidewalk vending carts and stuff like that. You think about a hot dog stand or something like that, But anyway, so he was known for that, and then to run the mechanism on because they were self-contained, he'd have a little steam engine that would run everything.
Yeah.
And then but off the steam engine, then there was the crank or the crankshaft like that. There was a little clown that was attached to it, and so when it was turning like that, it looked like the clown was actually doing all the work. Yeah. It was just an animation, didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But that became his trademark.
Sure.
And so now 100 years ago, okay, you're going to pop up some popcorn. Well, you don't have all the fancy oils and grease things like that we have today. The cooking oils.
Oh yeah.
And so lard was usually it. Okay, the problem with lard is that once you pop the popcorn in the lard, you either have to sell it right away or it's going to go rancid on you.
You bet.
Yeah, especially on a hot day. So
yeah.
So Dunbar started experimenting, and he found a way to use some of the steam off the steam engine to pop the popcorn. So he was popping it like an air popper today, and so you could pop up a big batch of popcorn, because it's not popped in the oil or the grease. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to go bad on you. And so you butter and salted it throughout the day then, or as you need. But Creeder's got upset with Dunbar and told him, said, "You don't mess with my inventions," and fired him.
Really?
So Dunbar went off on his own and started building his own then.
Well, what's good about this is you got pictures and a narration for every wagon. That's I don't see that normally. This is really a nice touch.
So
pictures of actually working, doing stuff.
Yeah. Now on this is okay. A lot of people look at this and they'll say, well, this is a water sprinkler wagon. Well, Studebaker actually advertised this as a street sanitizer.
Oh, really?
Okay, so
sanitizer. Yeah.
Now you're watching a movie, or a period piece on television, like that, and it's all idyllic and everything looks pleasant and everything. Well, the one thing that they haven't invented yet is smell-o-vision.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now it'd be like, think about standing in the middle of a stockyard.
Yeah.
It's not very pleasant. Okay, so I came up with some figures in 1884 in New York City. on any given day there was in excess of 100,000 horses and mules that were on the streets every day. 100,000 animals is going to leave a lot of.
Can you imagine wintertime what it was like?
Oh, geez.
I mean, it was
It was
that deep in mud.
Yeah.
And stink.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so they would have to clean everything up. But then once, and I can't remember how many tons of manure was removed every day, and how many gallons of urine, thousands and thousands of gallons of urine like that. But anyway, after they get it cleaned up like that, then they'd take these street sanitizers and run down the street and clean everything up.
Well, in Fiddletown, the Shellhorn building, the outhouse was built out over the creek.
I saw that in Vietnam.
Yeah, so you can imagine what the flies in them. But, you wanted to be here, all that gold out there, just pick up wherever you can find it.
Yeah, sure. Okay, we'll move on down here now. Okay.
We can't, I can't do every single wagon on
Okay. We can talk about, let me see.
Well, here's a good example.
Okay, I talk a lot about this.
Yeah, this, you can imagine the weight that this thing carried.
Okay, now the first thing, when guests come in and they'll go, wow, that's covered wagon. They think, okay, this is what the immigrants used to come across the prairie like that. And I say, well, that's the movie industry. They kind of perpetuate that idea. But in reality, this is a freight wagon.
Oh, yeah.
So that's 18 feet from one end to the other. So it's carrying a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And
most wagons are 10 feet long.
And also it would require a large number of animals to pull it.
2, 4, 6, 8 on this one.
Yeah. So that's in tandem there. So
jerk line, yeah.
So on something like this, you're in business for hauling freight. Okay, so most people would not own this like that. The most of the immigrants would own something more like this little Studebaker farm wagon here.
Right.
Like that. So it's real simple. You get the hardware, you put it on, put the bows on, put your canvas over the top, and you have a covered wagon. Yeah. Okay, so with this though, because it requires so many animals and everything, if you're out in the middle of Kansas or Nebraska going across the plains like that, and an animal gets sick or dies on you, you can't replace it. So instead, okay, so the one thing that these immigrants would do, okay, when they got into Missouri, either into St. Joseph or Independence, Missouri, there was actually a business there, if they had horses, to convince them to trade them in for ox.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because ox are, they got the stamina, but horses aren't going to make it, period.
Yeah.
And so anyway, they would trade them in, mules at least.
Oh, yeah.
But ox would be the best. Okay, you're only going to get 20 miles a day out of an ox, or thereabouts. And actually, that's as far as...
If you can get that much.
Yeah.
We had an ox, when we went across the United States, we had an ox that started out, and there's no way it could keep up. Because they just kind of walk along like this. If you can get 10 miles out of an ox, you're doing good.
Yeah.
Because they're real slow, and they don't drive with lines. They had a goad, then spike in the end, and
And you pull on it, yeah.
And
10 miles, well, okay.
10 miles would be about it, because they're harder to shoe because the wall on their hoof is, on a horse's, the wall you drive the nails through is about that thick. On an ox, it's about that thick. So you have to drive, the nails have to, and they can't stand on 3 legs. You have to either lay them down and put them in a thing that would pick them up.
So there's
straps and pick them up off the ground.
Oh.
Because we've got that split hoof, and you have to take those nails, and as soon as it goes in, you have to bring it out about that far from where they go in. They curve out real quick, because this guy tried to shoe this ox on our wagon train. He'd been a horseshoer. He never shot an ox. He had blood going everywhere because he drove that nail in too far, lamed the poor ox up. He finally just had to get rid of the ox because just no way it could keep up.
Oh.
And he got a little henny, which, like a mule, only it's reverse breeding. He breed a horse male horse to a female burro, which gives you a henny. They're even smarter and tougher than a mule.
Okay.
And so he got this henny, and he had it on a cart. And the wagon train, we had about 9 wagons on it, we'd be going along, and you see this guy out there in the desert in Arizona going like this all over the place. He never had any control over this thing. He'd come in, we'd stop at right around noon, have lunch. He'd come in he said, I just can't do it. He said, I just can't do it. So this kid who thought he was a cowboy said, I'll buy that henny from you. He bought them. He bucked that kid off so many times he finally gave up on it. An old Missouri farmer bought that mule, that henny, took it back home to Missouri after the wagon train, and he and his wife were going to town one day in his buggy. And that poor henny just tore things up and put them both in the hospital. Yeah, he just never got it under control.
Just refused.
Little white henny about shoulders about that tall, wasn't very big, but mean as sin. It's a fun. They're sitting on a wagon train going along. You see this way out there, and you can see this little white. There's a cart with a white canvas on, going in all sorts of different directions, going on like this. never going straight ahead.
It just refused, huh?
Yeah.
So we have a couple of different ones here. Okay, this one here is kind of interesting. This is also a stage. See the thoroughbrace on it, but okay. Now this one, okay. All these wagons here, they're delivery wagons of some sort.
Yeah.
They all have drop tailgates on them, like on a pickup. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, but on this one, okay, the front seat, it's permanent. You can see on the seat perch there that it's permanent. But the last two, those are removable. Mm-hmm. And the same thing on this Democrat wagon over here.
Yeah.
So if you don't need to haul passengers like that, you can just remove the seats and put supplies in. Then
I have to explain to a lot of people what a Democrat wagon is. It's not a Democrat. It's not.
Has nothing to do with
There's
politics.
no Republican wagon or Democrat wagon. It's a Democratic wagon that you could use for many things.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you take the seats out and use a delivery wagon, put the seats out and take your family to church on Sunday, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wagon of many uses.
Many uses. Very democratic.
Mountain Spring wagons. Okay, so we actually have two of them that are very similar.
Yeah. Mountain Spring wagon.
So
they all have that mustache spring. It's a real stabilizer for.
Yeah, and that's what that's all about. You can have spring wagons, but then this Mountain Spring wagon.
Yeah.
Once again, it's a side. It's to take those side loads. Mm-hmm. So if you're on a hill or something like that, it's not going to flip over
stabilizer, on you.
Yeah. You get over like on a little piano box buggy over there like that, and you step on it like that. That darn thing just. Yeah. It's so lightweight. And the same thing with this.
And that's why they had to dish the wheels. So you can look down this edge of the wheel. It's dished. That way it gives the wheel a strength. If it goes straight up and down, there's not much strength. If you're on a side hill carrying a load, if you don't have that dish, you can pop that hub right out through the spokes.
Yeah, that's what I explained that to people. Yeah. I said, look at that like that. So why is it that way? Well, if you're this wheel here, if you're making a left turn, well, all that pressure,
a lot of pressure,
is being pushed at the bottom there. And if those spokes are straight up and down, that hub is going to shove out that way. So, but because of the way this is constructed, as the pressures increases like that, it just strengthens the wheel.
The only way it could actually blow this hub is it would have to expand the tire, and the tire holds that dish in there. It's like an arch or a dome. You put tons of pressure on a curved surface. Mm-hmm. That's the whole idea here. The ones made in Europe had much more dish than the ones.
Yeah.
Because we had the hickory here that made a lot tougher spokes.
So
that Pennsylvania hickory is good stuff, man. Hard wood.
So what I've read about a lot of this stuff is like like the hub. If it's a wood hub, the preferred wood was black ash. Yeah. But if black ash wasn't available, and that would depend on where you're at. If you're in New England or Pennsylvania, it's going to be available. Otherwise, white ash. Yeah,
Well, when they first started building back, they would get the hickory trees for the spokes that were growing where the wind would move the trees a lot, and that would much more pliable wood. It would tougher because it grew tighter, the grain too tighter,
Oh,
where the wind
okay.
blew the
I didn't-
trees back and forth or like that.
Well, that's
Little
good.
things like that.
That's good to know, because every once in a while somebody will ask and say, well, what type of wood is all this? Like that. I'll say, oh, well, it could be a
Generally,
variety of things.
generally the wood here was poplar
Okay.
because there's no resin, there's no pitch in poplar. There are very few knots, if any. And those trees back east would go that big around, and you could cut paneling, half-inch,
Okay.
even quarter-inch thin, and just beautiful wood. In fact, when I built all the coaches, I always used poplar from back east.
Okay.
It's just
But
little
then-
things like that.
yeah.
That
But then, then the spoke and the fellows, it could be a different things. Hickory,
yeah,
you say.
generally, yeah.
Even for the fellows. Okay. Now,
If they couldn't get it, they'd use
well, I understood
white
white
oak,
oak would be
another one,
a good choice.
yeah, and it was the trees who grew back east. Because of the colder winters, the grain was tighter. The western oak, the grain is more open because they don't get those ice cold winters. So the grain would be tighter and make a better wood for wagon building.
Okay.
Little things like that. Now this is, I know it's
Okay.
called a mountain wagon, but it's actually it's a California rack wagon.
Yep, exactly. And there's this used to sit in the pole barn down below, and it was just kind of squeezed in between a couple other wagons. And one day this gentleman came through and he's looking, and all of a sudden he just kind of just came unglued. He was really excited and everything. Well, what he found was that on the front axle, the stenciling still on there. It says the Bain Wagon Manufacturing Company.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh my gosh!" He says, "This was one of the more complete wagons that he's seen." Now, this is actually considered to be besides a stake rack, it's also a freight wagon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because it's 11
Yeah.
feet. It's 11 feet in length, and it seems like that is that's the cutoff. In other words, if it's less than that, like that farm wagon up there, that's 10.5 feet. And this is 11 feet. So farm wagon versus freight wagon. But he says, this is the most complete one that he's seen.
Yeah, G.J. Yeager built these wagons in Jackson, California rack wagons, and he could tell his wagons. Did all the blacksmith was always the same. I could tell right away that he didn't build this one. But I have restored probably 3 of his wagons, and I have some metal off old wagons that are just. He blacksmithed everything, and everything did exactly the same. And after I restored one of his wagons, I called the Yeagers in Amador County. They're still there. They didn't want to talk about him. Must have been some bad blood there somehow. I said, I don't want to talk about him.
Oh,
Just like that.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
But there's a California rack wagon, and these were really popular.
And this is the other thing too. This the seat perch right here. That identifies California.
Identified. And the boards that come out of the back there, right behind this.
Yeah.
They always slid right in back in here.
Yeah. Well, I had to. We didn't have any photographs. No real connection on this particular one. But I spent a lot of time researching, and I finally found this. This is out of the 1902 Bain catalog.
Yeah.
Like that, and so there it is. It's complete. That's what it should look like.
They always had a jockey box in the front, and these stakes always stuck up above, so you can get a hold of them and pull them out.
Yeah, one thing that's kind of interesting to see right there. It says the Bain
Oh yeah.
right there.
They were good-
If
they were good
if
builders.
if you look right here, you can still
Oh
see it.
yeah, there it
You can
is.
still see it, and the same thing on the other side.
For crying out loud.
So
Yeah, you're lucky when you still have the original markings on a
Yeah.
wagon.
And it's like this is an example. Would you restore something like this? No.
No,
It's not a good candidate for it.
Not unless the wood's rotten or something like that.
Yeah.
Where you can't.
Yeah, if it's to the point where if you wait another year or two, you're going to end up with a pile of metal.
Well, if it's set outside much longer, a guy brought a wagon down from Washington that his great grandfather came west in, and it was really in bad shape, but the metal was still good, and so he said, "I want to have this restored, and put it in a museum up in Washington." So I took all the metal stuff off and put it in the fire and burned all the old rust and paint and grease off it. Built a brand new wagon. He took it back up and put it in the museum up there. This was his great-grandfather's wagon. It sat out behind the barn for 80, 100 years
Yeah.
and just rotted.
Too long. Yeah.
But these were really popular around here for some reason. Jaeger made, I think that's the only kind of wagons Jaeger made, because I've never seen anything else that had his name on it. He always stamped his name on the ironwork underneath the wagon.
Well,
G.J.
on
Jaeger.
these, yeah, this guy that was all excited and everything, he was looking at, you see on here,
Oh yeah,
it says BW Company, you know, so
yeah,
he said he'd never seen
Bay
that.
wagons.
He'd never seen that before.
yeah. Well, a lot of the wagon builders would buy these things from other makers, but these guys obviously had their own.
This is original.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah, so then he wrote up a blog about his visit there. His poor wife and daughter were sitting in the car, like,
Oh, bored
you know,
out of their
and
mind.
yeah, and he was
But
just,
see, these had high seats because you're driving 4 and 6, and you need to be up higher
yep.
to see out past the leaders.
So,
Yeah. You've got a great collection here. You really
so
do.
yeah, so
these
we
little
got this
basket
governess cart here, and then we
Governess
have this little pony cart.
Yeah.
Okay, this was donated by the Lemieux, and so John Lemieux, he was a former mayor of Angels Camp, but when as a boy he used to drive this to school, and so it's in pretty decent shape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So it's kind of funny. 10-spoke wheel.
Yeah, and those hubs.
Are these like personal cars? This is like your own, like your family car kind of here?
Well, okay, this is a pony cart, so this is something that a child would use. Same thing with this. Now, the mores of the time for the governess cart was that they figured if a woman could handle a small pony or horse, you know, although I don't exactly agree with it. I've seen some pretty mean ponies.
I've seen some pretty tough women too.
So, but if you know, as a governess, you know, she's got her the kids that she's watching. This would allow her to take them out on outings or whatever, you know, without having to have somebody drive them.
Yeah.
Like that. So anyway, so like I say, that was real popular, and this design here actually originates back in England.
Is that right?
You know, like that. So a lot of times people will see this and they see the wicker right here and they think of the John Wayne movie, The Quiet Man.
Yeah.
You know, like that. It's really not to say it's what they used in the movie is
Yeah.
much bigger than this, but same idea. But then there's that's another one. This had belonged to the Whittles. This particular one here, and then there's the Gutners. That's another. It's a sulky or
Yeah.
road cart.
Road cars.
And
yeah.
I'm working on the narrative for that right now for the text
Really?
panel.
Yeah.
You know, but
Well, those are pretty popular.
yeah. Well, in fact, it's the U.S. or the Postal Service would use them their rural, for the road routes. Sometimes it's actually probably easier on the carriers to drive something like this instead of
Sure.
riding a horse.
Yeah.
And then this one was kind of interesting too. It's called a braking cart. And I thought, well, what the heck? I didn't pay too much attention to it until one day I started doing some research on it. And braking carts, you know, that was an important thing. They'd actually have farms where that's all they did. And you think about an animal, okay, so you're not going to just take a mule or a horse and just stick them into a team and go.
Oh, no.
They have to be
No.
trained. So, you know, first of all, to get used to the harness, and then also the commands, you know, forward, backwards, left and right, and so forth. And also, you know, I guess a horse or a mule that's been trained to be in a team like that, they have to, you know, they pull differently. You can't take a saddle horse. and put 'em in.
I've tried that.
Doesn't work at all because
No,
they don't
but
know how to pull.
As soon as they start pulling, it pulls back on them. They start doing this, you know, they're jerking around it.
That-
I've torn some things up doing that.
I read that. Yeah, so they have to be trained from the very beginning. You know,
Great
like that.
saddle horse, but you don't take
Don't-
them off of that and put them on a buggy or a
Nope.
wagon.
No. So that's what this is for. you
Well,
know,
another
is
reason for
training.
two-wheeled when you're training is because when you're if a horse doesn't know exactly what to do, sometimes it'll come around on you. If you've got 4 wheels, it'll turn that thing over sideways and roll a wagon over.
Oh,
Where
that's a good
if they come
point.
around on this, you're okay.
Yeah, okay,
You're
that's
fine.
a good thing, yeah. So some of these kind of look similar, but they're different. They're built for different jobs.
Yep.
Okay, so these wagons here, this is really something special.
Howdy.
Okay, so
Heavy duty.
yeah, so this wagon and the one in front, they were built by Frank Branch, and his shop was up in Vallecito, and he was under contract from Union Construction Company out of San Francisco to build these wagons and then to haul heavy equipment from Angels Camp up to Camp 9. Camp 9 was a hydroelectric plant. It's about 15 miles up the Stanislaus. Yeah. Okay, so Camp 9 was built to supply electricity to San Francisco for their streetcars.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
You got heavy equipment going
yeah,
on there.
and so that's the dynamos and the transformers and all that stuff. So between the two of them, you could have up to 32 tons of weight. So it took 32 mules. And I was reading some of his notes. Said that if they didn't have enough mules on a given day like that, they'd have to throw some horses in there too.
Well, generally, they would put big, heavy draft horses on the tongue because that's a brutal position. Even
Yeah.
on the 20 mule team borax wagons, if you look at the pictures, usually the wheelers are
bigger.
big, heavy, 2,000-pound draft horses.
Oh,
Because
I'll have to take a look at that.
That tongue, when you're going, that tongue does this all the time. It'll snap around because this left wheel hit something and jerk that tongue. Well, if they're not big, heavy, you can't hardly find a mule ever that weigh 2,000 pounds.
No.
But you can tell that this was a jerk line wagon because the brake's on the left-hand side.
Uh-huh.
Because generally, the guy would ride the nine-wheeler with the jerk line
Uh-huh.
in his hand, and he'd have the rope for this brake over his shoulder. So if he's going downhill, he got the jerk line in his left hand, he's got the brake rope and he pulls that down like that. That's why it's bent forward, because he can pull it down like that.
Yeah, also when the equipment would come on, obviously on a train, and in Angels Camp, that was the end of the line for the Sierra Railroad, and so then it would have to be loaded onto these wagons, and then it would take 4 to 5 days to make a trip up to Camp 9.
Yeah.
You know, to get that equipment up there, and then so he said, it was over several days, so 4 or 5 days just to go 15 miles.
I'd like to see how they shrunk these tires on these big wheels.
Yeah, and if you notice on these are double tired.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So,
They may have just,
well, this would be just to hold it together, and then.
this could have been just an old tire that worn thin, and they put it without taking it off. They just,
Yeah. So it's
as long as it's tight.
No, he in his notes he did mention it was double tired.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is, I don't know, 5/8
Yeah.
or something like that, and then this is 1 inch.
Yeah. God, heavy.
No,
Look
in
at the
fact-
size of those hubs.
Yep, 19 inches in diameter and 22 inches long.
Took a big lathe to turn those guys.
So, yeah. So and also he once he completed the wagons, then he hired two local teamsters. It was what was it? It was Jim Inks and George Osborne, like that, to go ahead and drive them.
Amazing.
So.
Yeah.
And then this picture right here, this is Frank Branch right here, standing next to this wagon. But this was taken in 1935.
He's just doing a parade or something?
Probably,
Looks like it, yeah.
probably, yeah.
There's some people back here on another wagon.
I'd say it could be frog jump, frog jumping jubilee,
Yeah.
something like that. County fair. Although in 35, I don't know if they,
Yeah, I
there
think
for a
they-
while it was a frog jumping Jubilee in May, and the fair was actually August, September.
Oh, yeah.
So
Okay. But you can imagine how on a 20 mule team, it's about 100 feet to the leaders. So you're talking about
32.
32. That's another 150 feet out there to the leaders.
I
And when they
and I'm assuming it's this
it
way.
was a straight road, but if they're going up a mountain and there's an open field, they can get the wagon where the road turns. They get the wagon there and they stop and then swing everything down this way.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're going, there's a mountain here and they can't go past the road, they have to turn the leaders, couple of leaders, and then the ones behind them step across the lead chain. They bend the chain around the curve, and then they step back across and they go this way. And the ones behind them, 3 or 4 spans behind them, they keep bending this chain as they go.
Yeah, jumping the
jump
chain is
over
what I call like that.
Sometimes that chain would be that far off the ground. They'd have to jump over that thing. And training them to do that.
Well, yeah, that's.
Oh,
Well, I when people come in, and we're talking about this stuff, and we've got one real good photograph over there of a 12 mule team.
Yeah.
And so first of all, I'll ask. I said, well, how many straight roads do we have around here? And they'll say, that's none.
Nah.
So you either go to the right or to the left all the time. Well, then and on this photograph you can see the chain. The chain is there. It's and this one it's a pass-through rein. It's not instead of the jerk like that. So it passes through all the harnesses up to the front. And I say, okay, so if one of these animals gets sick on you or dies, you have a serious problem because you have to replace that animal with one that's got the same skills. And they go, oh, really? Like that. And then, so talk about, the two up front, supposedly the most intelligent, G and Haw. And then you have to talk about the wheelers. And then say, okay, you got these guys in the middle here, and you call them swings, right?
Yep.
So I say, okay, well, you're pulling on a chain, and so you're going around to the right like that. Well, as long as you keep tension on that chain, it's going to stay straight.
Yep.
So say it drops, so the road drops off, and so so G and Haw, they start around this way, and if nothing is done like that, pretty soon the guys in the middle are going to be dangling out there in space, and then they'll pull the whole load over the side. So it's what they do then. G and Haw starts around.
Yep.
And then so the next pair, they cross. They're both on the same side of the chain, and they're going this way.
Bend the chain.
Like that.
Yeah.
And then when they get to a certain point, they fall back in. The next, so they'll keep doing it until that wagon actually is pulled around that corner.
No, I admire the ingenuity of these people.
Well, I wonder how they trained them to.
Well, I talked to an old guy. In fact, he's dead now. He helped me train my mules when I got them. Old Martin LeBanco, and he said the way they trained the jerk line mules to step across the chain on command, he said when they would bring a mule, the guy would be standing at the corner of a corral with a pitchfork, and his mule walked by, he would call him the mule by name and say G if he wanted him to, and he'd jab him with a pitchfork, and he did that a couple times. Mules learn real quick. He'd say, Jim, G, and he'd go off to the left. Well, that chain's there, it's going to have to jump the chain to bend the chain around this corner. And he said that's the way they trained him. That's the way they trained him. Now, I don't know if everybody did that or not, but that was, because I was real curious about that. How did you get these mules to jump across that chain and bend it around these curves? And he said that's the way we did it. Yeah. So
of course,
I imagine there were other methods, but that one worked.
Yeah.
A mule learns
I
real
can see
quick.
that. Yeah, I like to say they're not stupid.
Yeah, all these little things are fascinating to me that these guys had to deal with, and the women, of course, they had to. Well, that's another thing about women on a wagon train. I found out real quick who the tough people are. It's not the guys.
Oh.
It's the women. A lot of women gave birth on a wagon train, for crying out loud. Can you imagine?
That tolerance for pain or whatever.
Oh. Okay, what was this wagon here?
Okay, this hay wagon.
Oh, of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
and okay, a lot of times I'll explain about. Let's say you want a hay wagon. Well, this is probably custom built. But the running gear you might have ordered out of the catalog, like that.
Chances are you did, yeah.
So anyway, so you get the running gear in like that, and then locally you would have somebody custom build the body for you. So in this case here, you can see this didn't come out of a factory.
No, obviously not.
That's all.
Unless you're hauling an awful lot of weight, these timbers were awful heavy for a normal.
But I'd say, you start off with just the basic running gear, and then build it from there. So same thing like with a chuck wagon. Now I know that in Studebaker, you can go to the catalog and say, okay, I want that, but that might not fit what you want like that. So you just get the running gear, and then you custom build the body to what you need, to the dimensions and
in fact, I've built I think about 3 or 4 chuck wagons now. We have one at the ranch that I built on a standard size 10-foot long wagon. That was standard size. 3 foot, I think 3 foot 6 inches wide.
For the bolsters?
For standard 10-foot long.
Okay.
Which isn't very big when you think the guys are out for months sometimes running cattle from Texas up to sometimes Wyoming. It's a long trip. I'm just finishing reading Lonesome Dove. And that was a 3,000 miles trip these guys took with right around 4,000 head of cattle. God, the drag shoe.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize they didn't have brakes on wagons for a long time. They had these drag shoes. They get to the top of the hill and they'd have to jump off the wagon. Just had a chain went up to the thing and they'd run that wagon up onto that and then drag that thing. That thing get red hot.
Is that right? Yeah.
Well, if you're dragging in gravel, that thing's gonna get hot real quick.
Well, there was a gentleman that came through here a few years ago, and he was in his 80s then, and he says, I used to help my grandfather.
Yeah.
He was now this is out at Oak Hill Flat, which is down by Groveland. Okay, so on Highway 120, from the top of the grade, it's called Old Priest Grade Road, and it goes down to Moccasin. And he said, I'd help him. He'd take 2 loads or 2 wagons of logs down to the sawmill at Chinese Camp. And I'm going, oh, really? So you went down Old Priest Grade Road with 2 wagons like that? And he says, yeah. I said, but he says what they would do, they'd get to the top of the grade, and they'd put the wheel locks on, and then they'd take 1 log off the back wagon and throw it off the back, and they wrap a chain around it. That was the anchor. And then those mules then would have to pull that load downhill. But which makes sense. The last thing you'd want would be to have the load passing up the mules. A heap of trouble if you get that happening. So
and how many roads are built with this scraper, like little Fresno?
It's worn through right in a couple of spots there.
You figure the railroads were built with these things and all the old roads?
God. So
people that died young, you can see why they worked themselves to death.
This is a smaller one here.
That is small,
used to be I found in the records we had a Fresno here at one time, but I don't know what happened to it.
Fresnos are a little larger than that one. That's pretty small. And then we got the buggies.
So so this right here. Okay, so this is the Phaeton. So this Phaeton and the 2 on the end are also Phaetons. And so it's what I tell people. I said, well, you look at this. This is a useless piece of equipment. Because I said, if you can't take this to town to go get groceries or supplies, so instead, you'd have a farm wagon or a delivery wagon or something like that, something that's a little more useful. So with this, it costs money and everything. So therefore, only well-to-do families would have these.
And these lamps didn't give any light to the road. They could see somebody else coming in the dark. About how good they were.
No, they didn't light up much.
No, little candle in there or kerosene.
But this has got an extension top on it versus the the canopy, which is down at the other end.
Yeah.
So it folds right back. And our little piano box there, that's,
Yeah. Yeah, if they didn't have the top, they were called runabouts.
mm-hmm.
And if they had the top, they were called a top buggy.
Yeah.
And this sold for $24.95
So,
with leather upholstery and
yeah.
diamond tufting and the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that's original or not, you know,
Well,
but it sure looks authentic.
it's been there a long time. The
Yeah,
look of it,
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's been there.
So,
I think leather.
yeah, it's, I'll ask people, you know, especially, you know, if I'll look at their age and I'll say, did you used to watch Gunsmoke? And say, oh, yeah.
Old
So,
Doc.
Old Doc Adams, you know, and that's...
Everybody calls them doctor buggies.
yeah. yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this gentleman came through one day, and he was we were talking about these, and he said, "Well, I've been reading the memoirs of a country doctor, and this doctor's practice spanned between the horse and buggy era into the automobile era, and he said he preferred the horse and buggy over the automobile.
Really?
He said, well, because he said, you know, after, you know, with the buggy like that, you'd have been up with a patient all night, or
You can
maybe
go to
you just
sleep.
had a little too much like that. You get in that buggy like that, that horse knew where breakfast
Oh yeah.
was.
You go to sleep and he'd
Yeah.
take you home.
But he said that damn automobile, he says it was so stupid you had to show it every inch of the way.
Absolutely. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Even
So this is just a little bit beefier. This
Yeah.
is still a piano box,
Got the size
but it's
thing.
got this is a platform spring.
Yeah.
Because it's all four sides, all connected together. But it's got, you know, the side
front and
springs.
back.
Yep. I mean, it's pretty stout
Yeah.
compared to that to the other one.
That'd carry a fat woman real good, wouldn't it? Whoops. Be
Where's
careful.
your wife?
Be careful.
Where's your wife?
Get in trouble.
Yeah. So Coop Rockaway. and-
Rockaway. Oh,
yeah.
yes.
The story goes, I was reading about it. It was actually in Jamaica. You know, Jamaica, Long Island. Okay, there was a carriage builder there that took these. Okay, so what he started off with was the design like for a station coach, and station coaches later evolved into station wagons.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
the train system really came into being like that. So, but these are pretty good sized wagons, and so say a ship comes into harbor, you go out there and you pick up all the family. You've got a place to put all the luggage and everything,
Yeah.
and then take them wherever you wanted to go. So it's what this coach builder did in Jamaica was that he trimmed it down to just this,
Yeah.
just the real basics. And then there's people from New York City were out and they're in Jamaica and they saw this. They said, "Oh wow, this is really neat." So they go running back to their friend in New York City. He was a carriage dealer and said, "You need to get an exclusive on this." And so an arrangement was made where the guy in Jamaica was building them and the guy in New York City was selling them.
out.
So
Wow.
this is 1838.
Wow.
1838. Okay, so now the human nature says, okay, can I get these any cheaper anywhere else? Well, the obvious place where you cut costs was the carriage dealer. You know,
Sure.
so cut him out altogether.
Absolutely.
So they'd ask him to say, well, who's building these for you? And they'd say, well, this guy in Rockaway. Now Rockaway's also out on Long Island there, and they'd go running out to Rockaway and find out there's not even a carriage builder in town. So it happened over and over and
for
over
crying
again.
out loud.
So it should be Coop, Jamaica,
I
not
wonder where the Rockaway. I never heard that. I never heard that part.
yeah.
That's where they come from.
yeah.
Because wagons tend to rock all the time, no matter what. So
No,
interesting.
Rockaway, Long
I
Island.
learned something today. That's great.
Okay, and you're talking about the little runabouts or whatever
Yes.
like that. Well, when this was donated to us,
Concord.
and so it was Larry Cornish. He lives up in Murphy's like that. He had acquired this and then he donated it to the museum. Well, I'm looking at this and I'm going, what the heck is this thing? Is this just a bunch of buggy parts put together? Because I couldn't really identify everything.
Yeah.
But one day I ran across the term there, light Concord wagon, and then all of a sudden everything started falling in place.
Yeah.
You know, so you can see like the quick
Yeah,
quick
quick
release
change, yeah.
for the heel shafts. You know, so
Those are sure
so,
nice.
So that came in, and then also the drop axle, the body. Okay, it's called the tray body.
Yeah.
You know that all that was you know that was inspired by the trays like what a waiter would use in a restaurant. And
Nice little carriage.
and then the open seat perches on that, and you know, just a whole bunch of stuff. Well,
Yeah.
it turns out that Louis Downing designed this.
Is that right?
Yeah, so that's why it's called the Light Concorde. And it's just a miniature version of the Concorde stagecoach, you know, because it's got a triple reach on it.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Amazing.
yeah. So
Yeah, I'm restoring a little buggy, just like a little. I'm calling it a prostitute's wagon because it has a parasol instead of a folding top.
Yeah.
It's a pretty little. I'm painting it yellow with red pinstriping. It's to me, it's a prostitute's wagon. It's going to be
so
no matter.
Pimpmobile, huh?
Yeah, right. Look, lady from Negotiable Affections.
Yeah. So just two more Concords. The
Yeah.
Lebues had donated this, but
Sure.
it's got, yeah.
Sure, the fringe on top.
This lady came through one day, and I don't know, for some reason, all these people seem to be in their 80s, you know, but
Maybe
but anyway,
the
the people that were with her, you know, they said, oh yeah, you know, Surrey with the fringe on top
Yeah.
and everything, and started talking about Oklahoma. Well, she said,
Oh, yeah.
she said, well, you know, being romantic picnics on a Sunday afternoon, she says, oh, that's a bunch of malarkey. She says, this is all you're doing is riding in the back of this darn thing, looking at the hind end of a horse and smelling it all day. So there's nothing romantic about it at all.
Well, I don't. My wife and I used to. Our little church is in Fiddletown. We live about 2 miles out of town, and we'd take the buggy and the 2 mules. I made a hitch rack down
Yeah.
at the little church, and we'd put a picnic lunch in the back of the buggy, and we'd go to church. And after church, we'd stop along the creek and have. It was very nice, and there was no stinky stuff. It was pretty nice, really.
Yeah,
It's a better way to spend a Sunday than going in your car. I'll tell you that much. To me, it was. Anyhow, I'm a romanticist when it comes to this era.
So,
this
well, that was her take on it. You know, so-
yeah, I'm sure that she had a lot of reason to say that.
so-
Yeah. No, this is a great museum. You guys have done well.
Okay, well,
You should be very proud of it.
let's see. We spent about an hour and a half, a little over.
That long enough?
Yeah, that's
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. It's good stuff. I learned something today too.
okay.
That's always good to learn something, isn't it?
Well, I tell you what, I learned as much or more from people coming in.
Oh,
than-
sure you do. Yeah,
Yeah,
people
yeah.
lived.
You know,
So many
it's-
people lived this era.
Well, it's like there was a couple from Cheyenne, Wyoming that came in, and we got to talking about the rubber tires. Mm-hmm. You know, now this is something I found out too. Okay, by 1895, so you look at it, you look at a carriage, and if it's got rubber tires on it, that kind of dates it. You know, nothing prior to 1895. You know, 1895 or later. But anyway, he said, yeah, these rubber tires they're kind of a pain. You know, so,
They are.
But
Yeah.
he said, okay. So he said, if you're to remove one of those tires like that, he says the darn thing's going to expand out. It's going to be considerably bigger than the wheel.
Has to be made bigger.
You know, so it's what it is. Then there's 2 cables that goes in there. So you lace them through the tire like that, and then they come together like this.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's a special tool that you put on there like that, and you crank it down like that, and it pulls everything down and pulls that tire onto that wheel.
Yeah.
And then you trim off the excess and cap it off, and then you remove the tool and roll it on there. Well, he said for a long time, the only guy that he knew of that had a tool lived in Rifle, Colorado. So to go from Cheyenne, Wyoming to Rifle, Colorado, that's a one-day trip
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
And just to do that, and then he says okay, after you get it on, and you might go a mile down the road and the darn cable will break on you, and then so you'd be back doing it again.
I have a rubber tire machine that was patented in 1898,
Okay.
and that's the wires. Now we weld them.
Okay.
You make the tire about that much longer than the wheel.
All right.
And that has to be forced together. It's held apart by the machine holds it apart while the wires come up. And when you get the wires welded, you take it off the machine and you pound them together. If you don't have that, if they're not longer, then it'll gradually open up and be a space like that in between.
Oh.
But they come off, and I don't
Yeah.
know why anybody would, if you live on a dirt road, you wouldn't want these things.
No.
Because they
No, they're not.
if you're on pavement, or cobbles, I can understand it.
Yeah, and it doesn't make the ride smoother. It just makes
No,
it quieter. That's
it's
all.
quieter.
Yeah.
And it's just as bumpy on a cobblestone as anything else. But it's practical, I guess, you're going on pavement, but
Well,
you need to be somewhere
Yeah.
where a guy can fix it real in your town.
Well, this guy told me, he said he finally acquired a tool.
Yeah,
And then that way he didn't have to make any more trips to Rifle then.
yeah. Well, I got my equipment from the Amish out of New Holland, Pennsylvania.
Oh,
They
okay.
deal with these things. It's got the original patent stamped right on it.
1898.
Yeah, 1898.
Yeah.
Not long after the rubber tires came into popularity.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they come off, and they if you're on gravel, then they take big chips out of the tires.
Yeah.
Particularly if they get a little old and they get kind of hard, and the rubber gets hard. And so I guess somebody made a lot of money on the whole idea, but
Well, the thing was too that the customers were demanding it. Like you know,
Yeah.
and say a buggy costs $30.
Mhm.
Just to have rubber tires, that's another $15.
sure. Yeah,
But they wanted it.
of course. If they could afford it, why not?
Okay. So
It makes you look a little classier if you got rubber tires.
okay.